Hello and welcome to another episode of the TF Cast.
Today with us, we have illustrator James Mackey with his new book, Faster Than Speed, based off a series of paintings he put together, and it's going to be a charity project. James, tell us about the paintings, yourself, and the charity. Start with you. How'd you come into the project, and what made you want to do the charity work?
This last year, obviously everyone's kind of been trying to find some meaning in all the madness and tried to find something to keep myself occupied and at the same time feel like I'm doing some good in the world. So I decided to play to my strengths, and I started by basically drafting about a dozen different short stories. This went through a lot of iterations, but in the end, I got through figured I needed about 34 paintings to do a 34-page book. And I kind of wrote the story up, got everything sketched out, painted for about 6 months, did all the layout and design myself, and got them all printed up.
So the paintings came before the story?
Kind of in the same time, mostly. The story was pretty much there, but obviously it needed a lot of ironing out.
Right on. And one of the things people might notice right away if they check it out, that it's a fantasy story. There's a lot of interesting creatures.
Yes.
Can you tell people, or just tell us a little bit about the creatures and maybe where those might have come from? I think that's kind of an interesting an element that you added there. It's very fun.
Well, growing up, I was a big fan of Jim Henson and the Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, and all that stuff, and it shows a lot, I'm sure, in my paintings. I love lots of strange creatures and weird little detailed, hairy things. The main character, his name's Emberly. It's kind of an unnamed species, but they're kind of like a rabbit / insect / creature.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was an exoskeleton.
Yeah, they're kind of a odd mix of things. I tried to keep them as cute as possible, though. Don't want to scare the kids too much. But he rides it's a large creature called a flurf. It's kind of a cross between a T-Rex, a cat, and an ankylosaur. But he rides it. It's a very fast creature, and he uses it to carry goods to his village. But of course, things go wrong. So,
Yeah, and what was your inspiration for the this hibernation process? It's so sudden.
Well, it needed something that could really drive the plot, and it struck me before that. If you have a cat, they can just kind of zonk out on a dime without, too much warning. And it kind of struck me as a little funny that if you're riding along and suddenly your mount just falls asleep underneath you, and you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, no, that would happen.
So, with this book, like, what is? And I'm sorry if you just already said it right at the beginning. Like, how does one decide that it's important to write a book like this and put it out in the world in this format?
I've been in publishing before, and
Okay.
I've worked with children's books, and it's something I'm comfortable with and something I enjoy doing. I've always loved kids' books, obviously, since I was a kid. And I enjoyed reading to my kids when they were little, and it's just something that's kind of, it's felt natural to do.
Okay. What does some of your other publishing work look like?
It tends to be young adult oriented. I do like doing lots of heavy illustrations in my work, obviously, but it doesn't make for easy to produce. It's like cheaply, especially if you have full color illustrations in a book. There's print on demand services you can do, but they tend to be black and white oriented. So a lot of my other stuff that I've published is black and white. So I've got a series called The House of Ichabod Strange, which is a series of short stories, and they're about a janitor who lives in a creepy old house. But that's kind of, it's in the vein of Amelia Bedelia, if you're familiar with those old stories. But just little short, goofy stories. I've got another a young adult novel called Burning the Deadbeats. It's about a kid who discovers a bunch of monsters living in his basement, and they have a rock band.
Oh, I think I saw the cover art for that on your website.
Yeah, I've had in some art shows before, but yeah, it's The things I've done.
That sounds
What-
like a fun one.
What was your original draw to getting into this like style of illustration and like is it something you went to school for or just a skill you developed?
I went to school to be a graphic designer, and I took all the art classes in high school and stuff like that, but I wasn't really passionate about it for a long time. And then about 10 years ago, I started having a lot more fun with it. I kind of fell in with some people that were artists as well, and kind of encouraged me. But I've always loved fantasy art. I just didn't have the practice or expertise to do much with it until I really took the time to learn how to do it properly.
Is that like a world building thing, or is this like a fine arts, like a skill?
A world building sort of thing. This is all by the seat of the pants.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty interesting to like, from the start of the book to the end of the book, it's kind of like you start to feel more at home in the world. And when I was reading it, I wondered like, is this part of a series or, some other, possibly, if any other thing had been written in this universe or if it just existed solely in Faster Than Speed.
At this time, it's the only, but I'm certainly not going to rule out doing more with it.
Mm-hmm. So like all of the names and the species and things like that, that's all.
Yeah, they could certainly go elsewhere. All the creatures were just kind of, they seemed to fit the drawings I did of them originally. And the main character, his name is, incidental. I named him after Ed Emberley, the kids book illustrator, just as a placeholder, but it just kind of fit him, so I stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get back a little bit to the exhibit, the gallery showing that you've got going on.
Yeah.
So what can people expect if they pull up to that? What's that going to be like?
Well, it's going to be at the Four Time Project from June 4th to June 18th, and there's going to be all the canvases that were made for the book. So it's 34 16 by 20 canvases. Some of them are doubles because they're page spreads, but they're all going to be up on display, and there's going to be an auction to sell them.
Oh, cool. And you mentioned it was for a fundraiser?
Yes, the proceeds of the canvases and the first 1,000 books are going to benefit the Echo Food Shelf in Mankato, Minnesota.
That's great. That's really cool. They're very colorful. Was one of the things that I noticed. Like, it was maybe this isn't a compliment so much as a criticism, but I hope it comes off as a compliment. But it was like almost difficult to focus on the words because the pictures were just like so pleasant to look at. I really got lost in that. It was very nice.
And sometimes I think, as far as how I used to enjoy books when I was a kid, I always enjoyed the illustrations way more than I enjoyed the stories. So that's always more primary to me than, if a kid can sit there and stare at the images forever, eventually they'll probably go and enjoy the story. But the first thing that the kid's going to latch onto are the pictures.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot there, like, going back at it. Like I noticed some, like, there's like other characters who aren't even mentioned in the text who are just kind of around, and there's some like busy environments, like there's some homes and city streets and stuff like that. So there's wonder there, certainly. So is it any coincidence going from Emberley getting supplies for his village to the choice to do a food shelf?
Yeah, it's very related to that, and the whole idea behind what this was to do a benefit for the food shelf, because I've had to use it in the past, and it's something that I think is really important to the community, and so I always wanted to make the story kind of related to food or needs in that fashion. In fact, one of the earlier drafts, this story was about an ant and a giant sandwich that he had to share, but that kind of went out the way.
Yeah, that sounds
like
sounds
a
pretty
good time.
cool too. Actually, doesn't sound very bad for the ant.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Can we talk about that a little bit more, about the food shelf
Sure.
stuff? I imagine that there's a bit of a stigma around getting food from a food shelf like that. I'm wondering if you could talk at all about either your experience or like what you might have taken from that.
It when I had to use the food shelf, I was going through some economical troubles myself. I had 3 kids, I had partial custody with, and I was trying to get my feet on the ground after some bad luck and some bad choices. And when I used the food shelf, it was just it saved my bacon in so many ways, and I was always very grateful every time I was able to use it, and I've always wanted to be able to repay that in some fashion.
That's it's a really important thing. I know less about it than I'd like, but I'm aware of Echo and the important role it plays in this community. I think that I know some folks who donate time and money there, and it's very important that those sorts of things are continued and supported in the ways that make sense.
Absolutely. And just especially with this past year, with the way things have been, and just, I mean, food is such a basic need. If your family doesn't have food, then it's impossible to function if you're not well fed.
It's like you have a million problems until you're either sick or hungry, and then you've got one problem.
Exactly.
What was the process of organizing with them? Like, was it just kind of like you're putting together a single donation, or is it?
Well, I didn't really approach them initially, and it was just kind of like I figured I'd just say, "Hey, do you guys mind if I do this?" and say I'm giving them. I mean, just because I personally don't care about the whatever else, but I fear people are more likely to buy the books if they know it's going towards the food shelf.
Well, yeah, I mean, kids. That's the whole thing. Is it's like it's a kid's book. So I actually don't know how kids' books are marketed. Like you have all the classics.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, like I just know that it's good to have a lot of them. Kind of.
Oh yeah,
right?
definitely. The books are. I mean, you can never have too many books. And as far as marketing is concerned, it's not something I'm strong at doing. So that's why I'm selling them local mostly. I do sell some books on Amazon, and these will be available online for sale as well. However, it's mostly going to be having them in local businesses or word of mouth. Lots of web presence, obviously.
If you wanna, we can like show a couple, or if you want to show a couple like frames from the book, we can just bring it up on there. If you wanna. There you go. Give folks the pitch a little bit, because I don't want to open it up, but like showing people some of the examples of like the creatures and the world building.
Oh yeah, here we go. So, okay, so here is the. I don't know how well you can see, or which camera am I looking at here?
Right
there. Okay,
right there.
All right. So here we've got the main character of the book. He's climbing up onto his flurf, who is getting ready for the big journey. He's got his family here in his little village, and they're all wishing him well. Things have not gone well. There's been a bad storm, and things are getting close to winter, so they really got to get their stuff together. So he's got to run off into the world and kind of get on his mission. But yeah, he goes into the city. And there's this little creature he finds along the way that he has to kind of make a choice with. He can either help the creature, or else he can book it and get his job done. They has to get done. And let's see, yeah. So
that was one of my favorite ones.
Oh, the city?
Yeah, I love the city market. It like reminds me a little bit of coming into one of the Star Wars environments in one of the original Star Wars films.
I'd be lying if I said those weren't influence as well. But lots of, the big thing with this story is I have a very short attention span, but I love painting like just weird things, just weird environments and creatures.
I was remembering that creature. Is that one the floof on the right too, or is that a different creature?
Oh, that's the same species as the main character.
Oh, okay.
She rides the San. There's this.
So that's from the middle part. There's like an altercation that happens in the middle of the
Yes.
book. So those are the same people.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
that makes sense because that was kind of like my one question. I was like, is that's the same person?
Yep. Yeah. They run into each other and they have a little altercation but yeah, it's
That's fun.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Such cool colors.
there's a moral to the story.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, there's a little something to be learned.
We covered it before the show too, but I think that the fast.
Care is faster than speed. Is
Yep.
the, here,
Yep.
grab that back. It's my copy.
There you go.
Get your own.
But yeah, the title "Faster Than Speed" is based off of kind of an ongoing theme in the story, which is care is faster than speed. That is to say, you can do something quickly and have to redo it a half a dozen times because you screwed up the first time, or else you can take the time to do it right the first time, and it'll take you a little longer, but at least you won't have to redo it a bunch of times.
That sounds like something that can only be learned from trial and error, maybe.
Yes, very much so.
Well, I think it kind of makes me want to know how much time you spent in sketching these things before you got to actually painting with the acrylic.
Well, that's just it. I planned everything out. I plotted it out because, like I said, I was trying to figure out some way to give my life a little bit of structure in the free fall I was going through, and then so I gave myself, I think, a week and a half to sketch. I went through like I said, a lot of drafts of the story, and then once I was comfortable with the sketches, then I started work on the canvases, and those took about 5 months.
Oh, wow. And so did you have like the models of the creatures, or were you still kind of like working from concepts in your mind when you were doing the acrylic?
I had them all pretty well sketched out. There were a few minor changes that I made as I went, but mostly the creatures were all pretty well drawn out.
Another one of the questions that I couldn't figure out, like how am I as tall as
That's the big question, isn't it? Well, it's not Earth, or at least it's not this Earth anyway. I do have in my author illustration at the end, it's me sketching one of the creatures from a distance, but it's still not totally clear what the scale is. I'd like to leave that to the imagination of the.
It worked because I was like, I'm either much smaller or much larger, and I don't know which one it is.
And I did intentionally put some elements in the illustrations to make you kind of wonder every once in a while, where it does kind of, like, you've got some areas where the trees are gigantic, and you've got some places where there's kind of stuff in the distance that should be a lot bigger than it is. So it makes you kind of wrap your brain around it.
I mean, it's good for your imagination because it makes you wonder. So
Right.
I like that it adds appeal to a children's book in my mind if it like sparks wonder in any way.
Mm-hmm. That connect that with the. Oh man, I feel like I had a good idea there. My bad. Anyway, with the colors and the depth to the story, I think that there's a lot there to be discovered. And with a children's book, like if it gets picked up more than once, that's wonderful, I suppose. And so giving that further depth for someone to discover.
Absolutely. If I can lure a kid to look at a book like enough where the kid just sits there and stares at it for fun.
Yeah.
Then they're getting out of books what I got when I was a kid, and that's really what I'm going for.
I don't remember having any science fiction children's books growing up, and like my dad was a big Trek fan. Like he was, like I remember watching like Star Trek growing up all the time, and like being exposed to science fiction stuff. But I don't think I ever had a science fiction kids book that I can remember.
Well, I didn't really have kids books so much, but I don't know if you remember in the 80s and 90s, there were the Terran Trade Authority books. They're like Space Wreck or Space War, and they're just these big coffee table books, and they were full of paintings that artists had done for for sci-fi books, but then they're like these elaborate oil and acrylic paintings, and then they wrote a story to kind of link them all together. If you saw them, you'd probably recognize them because they used to be in libraries all the time when we were kids. But yeah, like I said, this very in depth, like gorgeous paintings.
I suppose they used to have to make something. It was actually just yesterday I saw. It was somewhere on social media, but it was the frame from one of the Star Wars films where it was one of the Empire scenes, and it was the painting that had been done on like a shower door that was used as the matte background for the scene. So it's like there's like all these soldiers, they're stormtroopers, and it was one of the Y wings, and it was they zoomed in on it so you could see how like clearly it was like a matte acrylic painting as well.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't actually I'm misnaming the ship. It's not a Y
it's
wing.
the shuttle. It's got a specific name, but yeah, it's a yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen that scene probably 15 times, and I never knew that was a painting. And
Oh, yeah.
I bet you there's just so much of that like media that exists where we utilize painters in a completely
Yeah.
different way from
Yeah.
that time period.
And especially Star Trek with the way they use matte paintings on the Next Generation and all that, and then just this amazing artwork that you wouldn't even think, oh yeah, that's a painting.
Yeah, I think it's some of that. I mean, a lot of the stuff that goes into video is kind of like the more. I don't know how people. It doesn't get lumped in with fine art the same way that like
Yeah.
something that would get hung in a gallery or museum does.
Which is why I kind of hesitate to call myself an artist. I like the idea of illustrator more just because it seems like it's a little more all-encompassing. Because, you don't think of matte painters as fine artists or children's book illustrators. I mean, there's some exceptions, obviously, but like you look at, oh gosh, I can't think of his name, the guy who did Frog and Toad.
Oh, I should know that name
But
too.
I mean, they're gorgeous illustrations, but you wouldn't see them hanging in the Louvre.
Yeah, I suppose not. Well, it's crazy because they're everywhere.
Yeah.
I would be more honored to know that my painting, hung in the homes of, like the shelves of the homes
Oh,
of,
yeah.
like 10% of the world
Yeah.
than knowing that, it was one in the Louvre that people travel to see.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know which one's better. I can't remember the name of the guy who did it anyways.
I'll think of it after the interview, I'm sure.
One of the other projects we heard you were involved in was a creation of a zine.
Yes.
You want
Crap. Yeah.
and that's the name of it, not a disc.
Yeah, it can be both. No, it's it's this past couple of years have been a little tough, and in 2019, I needed to find a creative project to focus on, so I started putting together a little fanzine, a little magazine that I could produce myself without having to, bring in anyone else or something. I could just do it all on my own and produce by myself without sending off to a coffee shop or something. So I made these little cut and paste magazines. They're little short stories and comic strips and stupid drawings, and I put them together all with. I did all the text with a typewriter. I did all the illustrations by hand. I shaded everything by hand. I had the little transparency sheets to do halftones, and then I literally assembled them all on I had a home photocopier, and bookleted them all myself and left them around town in Mankato and the cities and just pretty much any place that would let me leave them behind, and a few places that probably would appreciate if I hadn't. But it's just something. It was literally it was stuff that was sticking in my head that I wanted to say, or it was just striking me as funny at the time, and it was literally crap. It's just stuff that I took in and kind of dropped without really thinking about it too much beyond that.
I caught one at the coffee hag one time, and it was fun to come across in that format. Like, I had obviously no expectations of reading anything when I showed up.
Yeah.
But it was a pleasant short read. I don't remember the specifics of what was covered, but I think there might have been some nudity and a little bit of little bit of inappropriateness, which was fun.
They weren't family fare. But the title was kind of an exclamation, and it was also kind of to let any reader know that they shouldn't have high expectations when they go into this.
Probably makes them more excited to pick it up though, too. It's like,
it's a weird experience coming across design too, because it's there for you, and it's not for sale.
Mm-hmm. It's just something you pick up
there. Yep. And I think some that's like hard for some. I'm pretty sure there's a couple of them sitting at the wine cafe.
Oh
still.
yeah, and there's one particular one I'd always like to see that she just started doing hers again.
Oh,
a little
Beth.
while ago.
With the buff zine.
Yep, hers are awesome. I love going to someplace if I'm traveling or if I stop in at a coffee shop or something like that and I see them lying around. I always grab one because I love seeing stuff like that. It just kind of adds to the atmosphere of where you're at, and it gives you kind of a little taste of the people that are around.
Mm-hmm. And it's unpredictable. Like there's no distribution. Yep. Like the only way is to come upon it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. it's like you're finding a magical artifact or something. Yeah, it could be anything. It might turn you into a frog. It might give you superpowers. You never know.
It's like a real world Easter egg.
Exactly.
Precisely.
That's cool. Well, and they're certainly not easy to make. Like they probably take a lot of time.
Yep.
And energy, and it could be easy to see that experience and be like, oh yeah, it's not gonna make me money or whatever. So I'm very impressed that it's something people
a labor of love
and able to push out. It's cool.
Yeah.
Glad that stuff like that exists and that people create that sort of thing.
Has most of your output always been in the form of paintings or these book pamphlet type things? Like before you were working on either of these projects, what was your first kind of like foray into the arts world?
I guess there was a long period where I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life, and then I kind of, like I said, I fell in with some people that were artists, and they kind of encouraged me, and I started doing some stuff for festivals. So like I'd just get like a booth at an art fair and put stuff up and sell my paintings for ridiculously low amounts of money, and mostly just to feed my ego. But it's it's something to go out and do and feel like I'm doing something constructive, and and at the time I was thinking, like now I can call myself an artist, and I feel like I'm doing something with my life. But but no, and then I started trying to find other ways to do stuff with it. There were a couple of I did a couple art shows where I sold the paintings, and then donated the proceeds to like the benches, the
animal
shelter, yeah. And just like I said, it's something that make me feel like I'm doing something with my time that might be helping somebody, or even if they see my paintings at a fair, because they tend to be kind of weird, and if it makes someone kind of stop and think for a second that that's a weird thing to think, and then they move on, and maybe they'll remember it, maybe they won't, but
what is the mark of I was going to say good, but I don't want to use that word. What's the mark of an interesting piece of artwork in your eyes?
Something that makes you feel anything. I mean, and again, saying the good or bad thing isn't always a good indication, because I mean, I love Bob Ross, but you see his paintings, you think, oh yeah, that's beautiful, but then you gotta move on. Or like a Thomas Kincaid or something. It's a gorgeous painting and it's technically well done, but it doesn't make you feel anything. But then you see something like The Scream, and it's like, oh yeah, that's a feeling right there. Or even if you see like a landscape or or an architectural painting where it makes you feel like you're in that space and it gives you a certain feeling. And I mean, maybe a Thomas Kincaid painting will make you feel that you're sitting in a beautiful sunlit garden or something like that. So in that case, yeah, that's look at art, I guess. So
That reminded me of my first experience, like being in an art gallery kind of by myself. And that's where I think I learned that art was something I could appreciate beyond just like understanding at a very basic level. When you like look at something, I guess maybe in previous experiences I'd just been forced to participate or something, but like being there by myself and having the opportunity to like spend the amount of time I wanted to spend with a piece was like it was also a pretty cool gallery in Madrid, so that might have had something to do with it. But like really just there were pieces that really stood out that I couldn't describe what was different about them from the one next to it necessarily, but it really made you think or feel a different way than some of the other ones did. And I guess I don't know how to describe that more, but it's like something unique about art that can really speak to you or connect with some of the human emotions that we have going around, and they can kind of like clarify something for you. It kind of like reaches out and grabs you.
yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't a question, I guess. Just a
I've had
statement.
like that same thing happen with a Norman Rockwell in the bathroom of the dentist's office. So
Yeah.
I got you, man.
Yeah. I mean, it could be be looking at a blob of red paint on a white field, and if that makes you feel something, then
Then it is the intent, and that can change over time. You know.
yeah, absolutely.
Which is kind of, you know, I wonder, you know, how something like a Rockwell is gonna look in 60 years from now. you
Yeah.
know? I mean, even now it's like we don't live in that America.
Yeah, and it could be argued that America ever actually existed, but yeah, it does make you feel something. It makes you feel nostalgic. I mean, now it does. I mean, and like you said, another 50 years, like it could be completely alien to what someone could even be looking at. Why is the kid looking with that weird look on his face while he gets his haircut or something, you know? Or why are all these people sitting at a table while this guy carries a turkey around? Why is it even a thing?
Yeah.
Huh. Cool. Well, should we? Why don't we cover where? Let's plug the show again.
Okay.
And we can head it that direction. So you're going to be showing the works from this book at the 410 Project.
Yep.
And that's going to be July
June 4th through June 18th.
June 4th through the 18th.
Yep. The bidding is going to be online, and I'll have sheets at the show itself.
Okay.
But it's a silent auction essentially. The prices will be on each painting as it is.
And the books are currently for sale. Like you can get them.
Yes.
Where do people find them?
People can either email me directly. I've got a Facebook presence. If you go to jpmackey.com, I've got everything there as well. I am going to be having these around local businesses, so keep an eye out. I'm going to try all coffee shops, some bars, some bookstores, probably. Just any place that'll let me, kind of like with my zines, any place that'll let me have them out and will take the money for me, then that's where I'll have them.
That's great. Well, anything else? Any other plugs we want to do? Any shout outs?
Not that I can think off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, we really appreciate you coming on the show to share your project and experience. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, beautiful artwork, beautiful, very fun characters and scenes to see. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
In bars and coffee shops near you, maybe.
Yes, with any luck.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.